Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar sponsored by Urban Toronto. My name is Anthony Youssef, and I'm the Program Manager with Buildings Canada. I'll be kicking things off today for the webinar titled Affordable Housing Development in the GTA. First, I'd like to cover some quick housekeeping notes. If you experience any difficulties with audio or advancing slides, refresh your screen with F5. If you're experiencing other issues, you can hit the question mark button to receive assistance. At any time during the presentation, you can submit your questions into the Q&A window on the left-hand side of your screen. Please refer to the reaction widget down below and feel free to share your reactions during the presentation today. In 24 hours, you'll receive a link to watch the recording of this webinar. Today's webinar is in the lead up to the building show, where you can experience all angles of the building industry. If you haven't already, I invite you to register for the event, where you'll be able to attend continuing education sessions, one of which will be presented by Urban Toronto and is titled Super Talls in Toronto, Data, Challenges, and Opportunities. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. Joining us is Urban Toronto's research analyst and economist, Ash Navabi, along with guests Alexis Minz, Manager, Investment and Partnerships at the Daniels Corporation, Mark Richardson, Chief Technology Officer at Rich Analytics, and Dan Van Leeuwen, Partner, GTA at Windmill Developments. And now I'd like to hand things off to Ash Navabi.
Thanks, Anthony. I'm Ash Navabi. I'm an economist with Urban Toronto. .ca, and we have a great show tonight for you guys, and it's going to be very, very informative about affordable housing in the Greater Toronto area. So just to begin, what is Urban Toronto? We are at the intersection of a few different niches. We are a news forum, a real estate forum talking about construction updates and developments. From that, we grew into a news website, and now we also offer one-of-a-kind data on development applications in the city of Toronto and beyond in the Greater Toronto area, all the way from Niagara Falls to Bowmanville. We've been in business for over 20 years now, and we get over 2 million page views a month. We have tens of thousands of registered users on our very active forum, and we have now over 5,000 projects in our database. So what is a development application? I mentioned that earlier. Development applications are the initial pieces of documentation developers submit to the city when they're starting a new development project. So this includes the architectural plans, the planning rationale, geotechnical reports, all sorts of information about who's building the project, why they're building it, where they're building it, how they're building it. We track all this information better than anyone else. Just some types of developments we track. It's basically anything bigger than a detached or semi-detached house. This includes every high-rise, public transit stations, as well as the warehouses, institutional buildings, government buildings, and more. Our premium Urban Toronto product, our data product, is UT Pro. We have a map that's available on our website that tracks basically every single project. UT Pro allows you to go deeper than this map in order to do some serious analysis of what's being built where, when, and by whom. Here's a pro version of this map showing you where all the new affordable housing and co-op pre and under construction units are. You can see there's a big concentration in the old city of Toronto and some scattering throughout the both the city and the GTA. Because we track development applications, we've been doing this for several years now, we can draw some trends. And the biggest trend, the most headline-grabbing trend, is that the number of new applications to the City of Toronto is falling pretty precipitously. This has been well covered by news media because of the effect of interest rates and other pressures that have been making new construction more uncertain and more expensive. But there's some good news, is that while generally construction has been slowing down, the construction of affordable units is actually increasing, both in Toronto and the GTA. So we are building more new units, even though fewer units are being proposed. The last thing I'll mention is that we also track who the developers are. Again, we track thousands of companies as well as projects. So we track every project a company is involved with, like a big virtual portfolio. And we have I've made here a list of the 10 largest developers who are building affordable housing. You might see some familiar names there, but we can also see some surprises, including Infrastructure Ontario, and the City of Toronto is the City of Toronto itself is on there as well. Now I'm going to be handing off the reins over to Mark Richardson. He is of Housing Now, or he works as a volunteer with the volunteer organization HousingNowToronto.com. And take it away, Mark.
We're a volunteer organization. We've been around for almost 6 years now. We were formed in December 2018. We track affordable housing developments that are happening within the borders of the City of Toronto, so not quite as broad a region as you get with the Urban Toronto folks. But we're very active on the Urban Toronto boards because we do use them as a method of tracking sites that are in the city. So I'm not sure who's on this call today, people from all across the country. So we are restricted to working within the borders of the City of Toronto. We do a lot of work with the University of Toronto School of Cities and the Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson, their School of Urban and Regional Planning. And the City of Toronto is one area within an area of almost 7 million people in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. So the work that we focus on is in the City of Toronto, but some of the lessons that we've learned are transferable into those other regions that surround us. But the further you get away from the CN Tower, your mileage may vary. The kinds of density we're talking about at transit interchange stations where two subway lines meet will be very different if it's just a GO train station out in the suburbs, or if it is a station that may just be along a new LRT line in somewhere like Kitchener-Waterloo. So we focus on a very specific subset of housing. We focus on government-supported affordable rental housing. And by that, we mean housing that is at or below the median income for people within the borders of the City of Toronto. So in the 2021 census, the median household income within the City of Toronto was $84,000 a year in household income, which means your rent, no matter what unit you're in, a 1-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, should not be more than $2,100 a month. That is what the average household, the average worker needs in the City of Toronto. Obviously, we have a lot of people who are both above and below that spectrum on this chart. So, you take your 84,000, you divide it in half, 42,000 a year is what a full-time security guard, full-time retail worker in a Loblaws or another unionized grocery store would earn. Then further down the spectrum, we have households who are earning less than $20,000 a year. People who are on ODSP, other kinds of supports, students who aren't able to work full-time, people who are entering semi-retirement. So how do we create housing that doesn't just rent at $2,100 a month, but rents at amounts below that? For anybody who's on the call today who's involved in government in any way, the most important item on here is this gray triangle. It's the level of government assistance. Everybody, well, almost everybody, except for some people in Rosedale, and you live in some kind of subsidized housing. We are just arguing over how much subsidy you receive and what method of subsidy you receive. You may not get rent vouchers, but you're getting property tax waivers, you're getting first-time home buyer incentives, you're getting the capital gains allowance. So everybody lives in some kind of subsidized housing. And over the years, as we've been tracking, more and more of people become eligible for that. Now in Toronto, the Habitat for Humanity organization, they provide affordable housing, ownership housing for people who earn up to $130,000 a year in household income. So some examples of social housing, rent geared to income, which would be the lower spectrums of affordability. Toronto Community Housing, which is our social service agency for housing here in the city of Toronto, in their 2023 report, annual report, their average household income was under $20,000 a year, which means that the average rent per month they can pay is under $500 a month. How do we build brand new affordable housing at under $500 a month in rent? The only way to do that is through large amounts of subsidy. This is the target that the city of Toronto has. So there are 285,000 houses in total in the housing action plan that have been agreed with the province. Of that, 220,000 are the private ownership, private market rental properties. There's 65,000 in the plan that was approved by council after Mayor Chow came in last year, which was an increase from the 40,000 units by the end of 2030 that were under the John Tory administration. So within that 65,000, we have these pools, these buckets. The one that we focus on is this 47,500 affordable rental units. How do we create those units between now and the end of 2030? That's not a lot of time. That is a lot of units. It's, literally probably about 8,000 units a year, because we're now in September of 2024. How do we create 8,000 units a year at that scale? Within that, we have the affordable rental homes, which are those workforce rentals at about $2,100 a month maximum. And then we have those super discounted rent geared to income homes, which are running as low as $500 a month, no matter the unit size. When we look at that, we can see these rent geared to income homes are only consuming 14% of the total new apartments that are being created out of this 47,000. But it will require 40% of the government subsidy to make those units happen. Because the only way we can create $500 a month rental apartments for those in that kind of need is to bring the money truck. We use a tool called the BC University of British Columbia's Housing Assessment Resource Tool. I just want to bounce through this very quickly. There's something called the Affordable Housing Deficit, once again, just for within the borders of the city of Toronto. The animation here is blocked a little bit, but there are 210,000 apartments that we are missing in the city of Toronto that would rent below $1,700 a month in the 2021 census. The next census round is going to be in 2026. And we know for a fact that these numbers will be worse in 2026 because in May of 2021, everybody was getting a CERB payment. That CERB payment was boosting your household income and rents were lower back then. So this is the challenge that we have. So there will be no miracles. And we'll fix this because some of the sizing on the animations here is a little off. There will be no miracles here. We have three questions. Does it pencil? Does it scale? And how do we speed up the delivery of these kinds of houses? We're going to talk very simply about one example. This is actually the Toronto Community Housing Headquarters. It's at 931 Yonge Street. It's a city-owned office building. It is in something called the Modern TO program, which is about how to surplus government buildings. It's very well located. It's next to Rosedale Station. I was actually at a committee meeting in this building yesterday while we were talking about Swansea Mews, which is a TCHC building that was built in the 1970s and has now collapsed. It had some structural failures in 2022, and they had to evacuate the whole building. So they'll be rebuilding that. This building is being surplused by the city. As I said, it's right next to a transit station. And the city, when they first proposed rebuilding this site, was originally in December of 22 only going to rebuild it at 223 total bedrooms, 165 units, and 21 stories. Our volunteers, through advocacy, were able to encourage the city to ignore some of its own policies about shadow study, for example, and go from 21 stories to 32 stories, to go from 165 total units to 250 total units, to go from 223 bedrooms to 346 total bedrooms. And therefore, we were also able to convert this from a condo building that would have had some affordable ownership units into it, into a building that now makes more sense as a market rental building with a large component of it being workforce rental as well. So Joe Berridge has this great quote that we use all the time. You know, these things are hard. Why can't cities, governments, provinces move faster? The enemy is always the blob. The blob is the congealed mess of outdated and overlapping jurisdictions, the diffuseness of responsibility, and the fact that simultaneously no one and everyone is in charge. And that's really the challenge that we have here. How do we turn people at City Hall, within Queen's Park, and within the federal government into blob busters? That is the rule, that is the policy that we have to follow. Housing data and delivery, we do lots of media stuff, visiting sites, explaining sites to journalists, explaining sites to reporters. We meet with people at all three levels of government, and we're happy to continue to do so. If anybody from any level of government is hearing this today, this is how you get a hold of us. If anybody's a developer who wants to talk about how can we make affordable housing work on our sites, get a hold of us. We're trying to make the math work for everybody. And now I'm going to hand it over to the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Mark. My name is Alexis Minz. Oh, Ash, are you doing a segue? Okay. My name is Alexis Minz. I'm Manager of Investments and Partnerships at the Daniels Corporation. Daniels is a private, vertically integrated developer that's built roughly 40,000 units over the last 40 years across the GTA. And the delivery of affordable housing has really been at the core of our mission for those 40 years. So I think in the context of the really helpful background that Mark has just provided us, underlining how difficult it is to get affordable housing built, I thought I would present 4 ways that we are currently delivering affordable housing across the GTA. The first model is something that we've called the Partnership for Affordable Living rental model. It's a model that we've replicated at a couple different sites, both in Regent Park as well as in Peel Region. And through this model, we have purpose-built rental buildings that do not have any affordable housing requirement. But again, because we've been committed to delivering affordable housing, we've tried to find ways to creatively integrate affordability within a market project. And one way that we've done that is through a head lease, where a nonprofit affordable housing operator signs a long-term lease for a number of units. It could be 10%, it could be 5%, it could be 20%. In our projects, we've done between 5 and 10% so far. And that affordable housing provider is able to focus on what they do best, which is selecting tenants and offering wraparound support services while not having to worry about any of the, it's called logistics of owning and operating a building. So for example, if the elevator breaks, if the landlord are responsible for all building operations, and the affordable housing provider does not have to take on any risk, both from a cost and operational staffing standpoint of that work. And so one of the things that we think is key to delivering affordable housing efficiently is partnership. This model really underlines the benefits of partnership between the private sector, the nonprofit operator, as well as government to get affordable housing built quickly. In both cases that we have done so far, like I said, there was no requirement for affordable housing. And so once the buildings were already under construction, we approached government with this opportunity, and through the City of Toronto, as well as through Peel Region, we were able to access funding that went directly to the nonprofit operators to acquire those units for, in our case, approximately 40 years. So, like I said, partnership allowed affordable housing to get delivered quickly, and the nonprofit housing operator is able to focus on what they do best while not taking on the operational risk of owning a building long term. However, switching gears, we have heard feedbacks from some nonprofit groups that they really want to own their units because they're able to build equity over time. So in the head lease model, there's no check that needs to be written up front to purchase units because it is a long-term head lease. On the other hand, at the end of that head lease, there's the possibility that the nonprofit no longer owns those units. Our intention is always to deliver affordability in perpetuity, provided that government support is there to facilitate that. But some nonprofits want to own units. So something that we've done at this really unique moment in time where there are projects that have standing inventory because of dynamics playing out within the condo market, we have worked with nonprofits to sell bulk units within condo projects that are either ready for immediate occupancy or in the final stages of construction at a discount in order to facilitate affordable housing and nonprofit ownership. Again, this does require government partnership as well. So the City of Toronto in August amended the MURA funding requirements to allow nonprofits to purchase condominium units. And that's something that we think is really important because, to Mark's point about the number of affordable units that need to get built really quickly, we think this is one way for nonprofits to access units and move tenants in tomorrow. Switching gears a little bit again, the first two projects that I spoke of are examples where we have market buildings and integrate affordable housing scattered throughout those sites. One piece of feedback that we've also received from some of the nonprofits we work with is they really want to have dedicated programming space to provide those wraparound support services. They might want to have their own dedicated entrance to really control their tenant experience. Daniels, in partnership with Toronto Community Housing, has a project in Regent Park that we've decided to incorporate 4 levels of affordable housing at the base of a market condominium project. Again, this is a market project. It does not have any requirement for affordable housing. But again, because we want to really push the envelope and show all the different ways that affordable housing can be delivered, we've been working together with Toronto Community Housing to create stratified ownership within a market condominium building. But again, one of the things that's really challenging for nonprofits is cost uncertainty and cost escalation. We could do a whole separate conversation about how much construction prices have increased in the last 5, 10, 20 years in Toronto, but it's astronomical. And that is a huge burden for nonprofits to take on. So because this component is within a larger market condominium, we are able to provide a fixed price turnkey delivery of the affordable density with no land cost. And so that will allow the ultimate nonprofit housing operator to acquire density at a significantly lower cost than they would elsewhere, both because we are not passing on any of our land costs to this component, and also because economies of scale will allow us to deliver that density at a lower price than if it were standalone. Another model that we've been implementing with several nonprofits across the GTA is the turnkey construction of affordable housing, either on land that Daniels currently owns or land that nonprofits own. And so again, because Daniels is a vertically integrated developer, we have our own construction and tendering departments. And so we're able to deliver affordable housing, well, housing overall, at a significantly lower cost than a nonprofit would be able to on their own. So again, if there's anyone in the audience that wants to learn more about any of these opportunities, I'm happy to discuss further, but the real benefits in terms of speed of delivery are locking in costs so that the nonprofit is not taking on that risk of escalation and that uncertainty. And then the benefits of partnering with the private sector and a vertically integrated developer that's able to provide turnkey delivery of affordable housing so that when units are ready for occupancy, the nonprofit is able to take the keys, move tenants in, provide those wraparound support services, and not have to worry about the staffing and the cost that goes along with a 5, 7, whoever knows how long development's going to take in the future. But all of that uncertainty is, in our opinion, best handled by the private sector because that is what we do best. And the nonprofit sector is able to focus on what they do best, which is providing those tenant support services. Thank you.
I go okay. My name is Dan Van Leeuwen. I'm a partner with Windmill in the GTA. I wanted to go through today, first of all, a little bit about Windmill. Windmill's been in business since 2003. We've always been a company that's focused on innovation and moving the needle when it comes to building healthy communities, trying to find solutions that are aimed at sustainability, inclusion, and bringing people to enjoy their community. In the last few years, we started operating under what's called the One Planet Living framework. It has 10 principles. Those principles look beyond just the sticks and bricks of a building and actually look to build equity. They look to build connections to nature. They look beyond just the simple, here's a condo for you to live in, and try to find means for people to be included, have a healthy lifestyle, and live within the limits of the planet itself. What I wanted to talk about, and we've already heard from Alexis, there's no one silver bullet to solving affordable housing. In our view at the moment, across the country, and especially in the GTA, there's obviously a distinct lack of affordable, environmentally sustainable, and transit-connected housing. In the 30 years I've been doing this, one part of the housing affordability equation that is often overlooked and is not accounted for in a lot of the financing models is actually the cost of occupying a house. If you live somewhere, what is your cost to pay your heat, pay your hydro, but also get to work, transit, and those things? They're not factored into that affordable calculation. We think that needs to start to happen as a complete picture. As Alexis said, cost of housing, cost of construction has gone up, cost of everything has increased tremendously. We have to look at the entire cost of living in a unit as a complete solution. We also believe very strongly in a mixed market approach. So that's mixed income, mixed tenure. And what that really says is we have a mix of people within one project that can afford a wide range. And within that wide range from affordable right through to market, you're able to get some cross subsidizations in there. So the project I'm going to take you through today has all those elements involved in it. The last thing is long-term affordability. Again, lots of solutions for affordable housing. What we wanted to focus on in the Eglinton project was how do we deliver affordable housing that starts affordable, but maintains its affordability over time while lessening the subsidies required by the government. The only way to achieve this type of stuff in our mind is public-private partnerships. Daniels is doing the same. A lot of the developers out there have realized the only way to unstick the blob, as you heard about earlier, is to form public-private partnerships where each of the partners within that delivery model do what they do best to deliver on what they do and can bring to a project. So our goal has been trying to deliver quality housing. That's a diverse offering that caters to different socioeconomic groups, income ranges, but also looks at it from a very long-term perspective. I'm sure everybody's seen this before. Every single real estate development project is consisting of these basic 5 elements: the cost of land, construction costs, the soft costs, architecture, legal, the fees to get it done, government charges, and then of course there's always a profit to the developer. That's why we do these things. In trying to assemble affordable housing, tackling each one of these elements is actually the only key you can get to get the price down. So in the case of Eglinton, the land itself was a plot of land owned by the City of Toronto, controlled by Create TO. And the way we overcame the land cost issue is the City of Toronto is contributing the land underneath the co-op on a 99-year lease, essentially for $1 a year. There is a component which will be a private development, condo or otherwise, which we as Windmill and our development team will own and turn into the market section of this mixed-use project. We will be paying that land cost into the project, and that money will be going to subsidize or go back into the co-op housing. The City of Toronto, we know that charges, DCCs and other fees have climbed over the last bunch of years to become a very significant cost. In the case of the affordable housing here, the City of Toronto is waiving the DCCs and other portions of our fees in order to keep our costs low. A nice thing that goes with this is financing coming in from CMHC. So CMHC just recently announced a co-op housing funding program that is aimed at providing long-term loans to co-ops. You take those elements and those partnerships together and you start to see that we can reduce land costs, government charge costs, soft costs in financing, and also speed up the approvals with the city. So the history of the project, in 2004, Create TO announced the partnership of Civic and Windmill to acquire the site. We teamed up with the Co-op Housing Federation of Toronto, CHFT, who's coming in to operate the project long-term. So if you break it into its elements, Create TO created the vision for the project. City of Toronto is the landlord and the ground lessor. Civic and Windmill contribute equity to get the project done and manage the development process. CHFT is the long-term operator and not-for-profit, and Canadian CMHC provides the financing. What is co-op housing? I think this is critical to this project itself. Co-op housing is a form of housing where profit margins and the real estate appreciation isn't the key driver. It's owned by the residents who are members of it. The idea is to keep rental increases only to cover the true operating costs, but take appreciation of real estate, profit, and those type of things that drive up costs out of the equation. So it's governed by its members to a board of directors. That board of directors' goal is to ensure that over time, the only thing that increases rent is the cost of maintaining and operating the property. There hasn't been a lot of co-ops built in the last 25 years. They sort of lost favor in terms of financing. They also take a lot longer, let's say, to maintain the affordability. So this is one of the first co-ops that's done in Canada in the last 25 years. So let's talk about CHFT. So again, CHFT's objective is to break even over time. And that permanency of affordable housing, we think, is the critical element in pushing the ideas of affordable housing forward for this part. We're building a lot of affordable housing, but maintaining it long-term is important. CHFT has a long history. They've been in business since 1975, operate about 180 co-ops across the GTA. They do maintain their rents geared to income. Interestingly enough, they have some projects that have been around for a long time. And one of their projects in downtown Toronto, they still rent a one-bedroom for $900 a month. So again, over time, the rental increases have only been geared to operating costs. Create TO, none of this would have happened without the vision of Create TO. As cities look at their land inventory and surplus land that they have, it's important to have a government operation or government company that looks to plan the site, deal with the communities, get that feasibility rolling so that when you do call in the private sector to help deliver it, a lot of the things that take us a long time, the community outreach, the planning, the context, the way that we look at the project are already been done. That speeds up our time as private developers in getting through the city process. The City of Toronto and Housing Secretariat, again, did an inventory of the land that they have, and putting that land up for affordable housing, making concessions on how that land is actually funded into it, and finding solutions where the land cost becomes negligible is key for it. The city is also able to waive DCC's fees, and because we're dealing with a not-for-profit, give us property tax abatement. One interesting thing with this project, because Create-TO did so many years of initial legwork, planning, working with the community to find out what project would fit at 244 Eglinton, by the time we got to make our application for zoning, it only took us about 70 days to get through it, which is kind of record time for Toronto. Civic and Windmill, what's our role? Our role is to hire the development, the architectural team, conceive of the project, do the financial feasibility. We're also required to put all the pre-development equity in. So in exchange for being able to acquire the private sector portion of 244 Eglinton, our risk is to make sure that the project gets approved, funded through construction, get the construction financing, and actually start delivering it. So the equation for us is to bring our skills to the table to design, approve, and get the project under construction as quickly as possible. In exchange for that, we're able to acquire the portion of land that we can build a private development on. CMHC. So CMHC just this year announced a $1.5 billion commitment to co-op housing. They put that program in place very, very quickly. They announced it in early 24, and first loan applications just went in September. We think this program is designed to really lock down long-term affordability. You have to be a not-for-profit. You have to be a group that's going to run the building on a cost basis. In exchange for that, the financing model is very good, long-term, low-interest finance. So what does that all mean? It means that we're able to develop high-quality, highly sustainable a project that meets qualities of any other condo or any other building in town. In this site, we have 2.8 acres in total. We're delivering 918 homes in the 3 towers. 612 of those are co-op rental, both market and initially affordable. And again, in exchange for that, we will build 306 market condos or market rental. The work that Create-TO had done over time was to look at the Kennedy Station area itself, do a context plan, and start to give a head start for developers on what is the area going to look like. They then put the sites out for tender, and we're able to work within the framework that they had already agreed to. This site is highly transit connected. Again, back to my earlier point. Being able to lower your cost of occupancy or the cost of living by being close to transit, having high accessibility to work is important. I think Kennedy's one of the most connected sites in the city of Toronto from a transit perspective. We're also connecting to the Hydro Corridor and the Greenway and making sure that this project has a great connection to nature. Again, some more eye candy and pretty pictures of what the project looks like. The other benefit of working with the city and working with land partners nearby is we're able to improve the public realm. So the bottom right picture is Kennedy Station as it stands today. As we use these surplus lands, which used to be a parking lot, and start to work with the city on the subsidy model, we're actually able to put more money into public realm improvements, connectivity. This is what's going to, we think, encourage people to have a nice, safe environment to work with transit, improve the public realm, and create a high quality place to live. One Planet Living in our standard, again, going back to the quality of life in a building and the cost of occupancy. Eglinton is going to be 100% geothermal. We exceed the Toronto Green Standard in terms of exterior facade, energy modeling. All those things that we bring from our One Planet Living philosophy actually lower the overall cost of occupancy. So your hydro costs are less. Your everything that has to do beyond just paying your rent for the unit impacts your ability to live. So we're saying build more sustainably, build high quality buildings that lower the overall cost of occupancy. That needs to be factored into our equation when we look at what it means to rent a unit. We saw numbers before, $2,100 is what you can afford. But if your cost of owning a car, your cost of insurance, your cost of transportation, you can build a cheap unit in the middle of nowhere. But if your cost to actually get to work requires you to have a parking stall, 2 cars, it's almost not worth it. So we really believe at this point in time, getting people connected to transit, building lower parking, building higher quality buildings. It takes some subsidy from cities, or it takes some movement on getting the cost down. Overall, for the long term, these units are going to stay affordable, just like the example that I gave you, where they still have units at CHFT, downtown Toronto, 1 bedroom for $900. The overall play here is not for real estate appreciation or real estate profit. It's for permanent affordability for people. And I think we heard from Daniels, what they're doing is awesome, getting units built quickly on all sorts of different models to fill holes and fill gaps. We believe in that. We also are saying, let's play with models that take real estate profit appreciation out of the model, give it to not-for-profits so they can maintain sustainability, maintain that affordability over time. Little more pretty pictures, again, connecting interfaces, you know, the environment out there right now. We really believe people need to have access to high quality environmental spaces, get back to nature. We've done projects that are based on urban agriculture and other stuff. We're quite proud of the ability to connect into both the transit, but then also bring people back to nature in this project. We have a lot of community gardens, community farming, and again, just improving the overall quality of life for people. Last picture, when you put it all together, it's a fairly large, complex project with a whole bunch of different uses, community amenities, shared uses, but overall, this model becomes a mixed use, mixed tenure, mixed income, long-term affordability for 2/3 of the project, cross-subsidized by government and private developers. It's one thing that we think will help, lots of solutions, but this is one project that we feel is an idea. And if there's anybody out there thinking of how they can bring affordable, it really comes down to partnership and using everybody who can touch a project to reduce the costs and create long-term affordability. That's what I have to say, so I'll toss it back.
Thanks, Dan and Mark and Alexis. If you could all actually just turn your cameras on as we transition into Q&A from the audience. We already have a bunch of great questions, but if anybody else has a question for any of our panelists, please feel free to enter them into the comment section now. We have about 15 minutes to get into it, which is plenty of time. I guess one thing I will start with, one question for all of you to answer is alternative construction methods such as prefab, modular housing, mass timber, etc. What do you think of the viability of these modes of construction, and are you planning on building any of these in your models, or what do you think of their viability?
So I'm happy to jump in on that one. I mean, there are some examples in the city of Toronto for very low income transitional housing to get people out of tents and out of shelters that have been done as modular housing. So volumetric modular wood frame housing. Some of them have been very successful. Some of others have been tied up in legal challenges and battles, and Toronto Star has a pretty good history recently of a modular housing site in Willowdale. So those projects really need all 3 levels of government to collaborate with one another. We're certainly starting to see, when we need to build something sort of at the kind of scale of the Eglinton buildings you were looking at there, or some of the Regent Park buildings, you're already starting to look at panelized options. If the province let you, you could probably even do mass timber. I was at an apartment building in Milwaukee a few months ago. They do a hybrid building, cement podium, cement elevators, and then 26 floors of apartments that are built with mass timber structure. So yeah, there's lots of opportunity, but it requires changes to the building code, changes to the fire code, changes to what CMHC will fund and how they will flow the money, because you have to pay for a modular construction building all up front in order for them to start at the factory. And CMHC, like all lenders, likes to drip the money out over multiple years as the construction's underway. And I'll let somebody else jump in there too.
Yeah, we at Windmill, we're doing mass timber right now. So we've started something called the Hulsa Initiative, which is based on an architectural form in Scandinavia, which is about healthy living. So we've partnered with a company out of British Columbia called Intelligent Cities that build prefabricated mass timber. It's not rapid right now. There's a lot of work yet to do, as you said, building codes, costs, just figuring out how to build it. But one thing I think we as an industry, we tend to do things the same old way, same old way, same old way. And now the pressure is on us to find more innovative ways to build. So I think you'll see a lot more of the prefab, a lot more of these innovative construction models coming in as construction costs continue to rise. But that balance comes into, it's still more expensive, but it's moving down. So it's one of those things we have to keep exploring, put into practice. But I'm hoping to see myself more focus on prefab buildings that can speed up construction, albeit you pay for some of it up front, less disruptive for communities when you build prefab. It's got a little ways to go, but we're working on it for sure.
Alexis, any thoughts from you?
No, I echo what Mark and Dan have already said. We're always looking at new and innovative construction methodologies. For our projects right now, we have not seen the cost benefit that would allow us to deliver housing more affordably using that technology, because even though you may save time in your construction, the premium for panelization and mass timber still outstrips that. So your overall bottom line cost is still higher.
Great.
That's right.
Just to speak more to Alexis on this, one question asked about what sort of government funding or CMHC programs does Daniels rely on to build subsidized housing?
So we are working with several nonprofits right now who are planning to access the Affordable Housing Fund, previously called co-investment, to acquire housing both on a standalone basis as well as in that strata example that I gave in Regent Park. We've also accessed the apartment construction loan program, previously RCFI, for the purpose-built rental building in Peel Region that incorporated affordable housing units on a head lease basis. Those are the two primary examples that we have recent experience with, but we've been working with CMHC for 40 years on various programs as they've come and gone.
Great. And before I move on to the next question, I just want to remind the audience that everybody here will be receiving a PDF copy of the slideshow, as well as a link to the full recording that you can review later. For Dan, can you talk about the market, or talk more about the market viability of building co-op housing, especially in today's interest rate environment?
Yeah. Again, I think interest rates, they're historically about average now, but I think it's more about looking at it from the long-term perspective. In other words, yes, we have to bring down the costs the best we can, but provided that there's that long-term mortgage ability from CMHC, you have to look at it over the 30, 40, 50 years life of the building. So I'll give you the example. Of the 600 units, half of them right now are considered affordable by the standard. The other are market, albeit close to affordable, but market rate. But as time goes on, whether they finance a 6% mortgage, 5%, whatever that is, over time, as that mortgage gets paid down and it stays stable for that period of time, those market units actually become more and more affordable because the incentive is not to refi the building and pull out equity. The idea is to keep paying down your PDI and get your principal down. So what the co-op does is, almost regardless of the interest environment, provided that we can solve the equation of cost, land, the land lease, and leverage that into a reasonable mortgage, enough equity to value, given the time of that mortgage, it's almost like yourself. You get a 25-year mortgage, you want to pay your house off. Co-op does it the same way. So I don't think we focus so much on the current exact moment of interest. We say to ourselves, what's that curve going to look like in 10, 15, 20 years as you pay down principal and you don't refi and pull out equity? That is what's going to maintain the affordability. So at some point in time, your curve of spend is not as much interest and mortgage driven because you've paid down equity and you've maintained yourself at a not-for-profit only cost. So the question's a great one. Interest rates are difficult for affordable housing, but if you can take that 20, 30, 40-year view of real estate as a place to live and do at a cost, you're going to be able to give permanent affordability. So the mindset for a co-op is you're actually not on the property ladder per se. You're not hoping to make your money from selling the real estate. You're keeping your costs low so you can do other investments. And that takes interest somewhat out of the equation long term.
Great, thank you for that. Just a bit of a clarification I just got from the organizer of this event. The slides are actually available from the resource widget at the bottom of your screen. You can download them, you can view them from there. Just on the issue of the income ladder, Mark, somebody asked, how does one get on the affordable housing list?
Which affordable housing list is probably the better question. So Co-op Federation of Toronto will offer their own list, likely. So on the 244 Eglinton site, probably hopefully breaking ground in 2025, occupancy 2027, 2028 for the first section of the co-op, fingers crossed, God willing, everything working properly. So at that point, they will go to their list. The city will also, City of Toronto, and I know Daniels has had a couple of these, they have a moderate income housing lottery program. So those individual sites go out to a lottery process that you have to apply to. Our volunteers have had a lot of issues with the lottery process the way it's run right now, because every building is a unique lottery with a unique application system. Whereas in a place like New York City, you have their Housing Connect system, which means you set up one profile and you can apply over and over again for the same lottery. So we've been working with Code for Canada and some other civic tech organizations. And I think maybe Co-op Federation as well is interested in using sort of a standardized tool for applying, but that's different than, say, the modular housing we were talking about for people who are coming out of shelters. Those are not going through a regular application system. They're being assigned into new housing via a caseworker. And then on a TCHC and a rent geared to income unit at in Regent Park, for example, in new phases of Regent Park that have rent geared to income units in them, you are on the Toronto Community Housing Waitlist, which I think last time was around about 80,000 households waiting. But those are for those units that, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom that rents for under $800 a month. So, there's a lot of demand for those incredibly low cost units, and you have to qualify for those every year, for your subsidy every year based on your household income. So there are many different ways, and there are many different lists, because there are many different kinds of affordability.
Great. Alexis, just back to you. Can you speak more about how units are purchased through the rental partnership model?
Sure. So through the rental model, the units are not purchased. They're operated via long-term head lease by a nonprofit. So I think I saw the question earlier in the chat pop up also around how that contribution is assessed. As a for-profit developer, we cannot deliver these projects at a loss because then, of course, we'd be driving ourselves out of business, and our intent is to continue developing a lot of housing for many years to come. And so what we have done is looked at what the gap is between affordable rent and market rent, and that has been the effective contribution required in order to secure that head lease. So to give the audience a sense of scale, it's between, again, depending on the project and the duration of affordability, the depth of affordability, $100,000, $150,000 per unit. It might be up to $200,000 per unit today. But if you think about that in the context of the cost to purchase a unit, it is significantly more affordable. And so, like I said, the advantage of the head lease is there isn't a $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 check. The units that we have delivered via this head lease are between 1 and 3 bedroom units. We're not talking about micro studios. And so it is a very affordable way for an affordable housing provider to access a unit, but it is through a head lease, not a purchase.
And there was a very successful program you did with a wood green on single mothers and families in like 2021 that I know we use as a reference case when we're talking to other market rate rental developers who have surplus inventory.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Yes, that's our partnership for affordable living at our Evolve rental building in Regent Park that's owned in partnership by Daniels and Sun Life Financial. And we've since replicated that model in the region of Peel in a project that we own with Choice Properties.
Great. Just a quick note. I see some people saying that the slides are not the correct slides in the resource widget. I'm told if you refresh your page, that should actually fix the problem. We do have just enough time for one more question. And just for you, Dan, it's actually from Mark. Do you think the $1.5 billion commitments from the CMHC to support co-op housing is enough?
The answer is no. I mean, the answer is yes and no. I mean, I think it's a significant commitment. It is across the country. We heard that in the first round of applications that went in middle of this month, a week ago, there were over 120 applications, few of them as large as ours. So the answer is no, there's never enough money. But I think in looking for the solution, and you've heard Alexis talk about it, the solutions aren't always how much money can the government give us. It's how can we leverage the partnerships of each person's asset and skills. For example, we don't need a lot of subsidy. We're putting back a huge amount of money back in the co-op as we buy the private land, albeit for exchange for what we're doing at Kennedy. We're getting that land essentially at a fixed price, market price, but fixed price. So the answer is it enough money? Probably not. Is it enough money? It could be if we leverage it correctly. And I think that's one thing that we have to look at in these programs is see how they start to unfold. It's new territory. So I don't want to criticize the dollar amount. I think what we're advocating for is get a bunch of smarter than me people in the room and try to figure out how can you leverage all the components that go into the cost structure, land, equity, and others to maximize that $1.5 billion. So it goes as far as it can go. I think that's the answer I'd rather give is it's a great start. And can we maximize the leverage by getting a bunch of smart partnerships together to use it to its best deployment?
It's a first time spend. Is what the way we talk about it. It's a great first step, but you kind of need to do $1.5 billion a year for the next 15 years.
It could do. I mean, there's so many different models, guys. Alexis has great models. Other companies have great models. You're right. It's a first end model. I think permanent affordability should come out of money that the government puts in. But you're right. It's an impossible question. How long is a piece of string? You don't know until you start pulling on it.
Yeah.
Great. And with that, I'd like to thank both our panelists for participating here, as well as all our guests for viewing and asking your excellent questions. And just as a final reminder, please, if you're interested, sign up for the Buildings Show. And I hope to see you guys at our next seminar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. And as Ash suggested, just a quick reminder that registration for the Building Show is now open. You can find more information by scanning the QR code on your screen. If you have not done so yet, please do visit the resource widget in your webinar console. You can access documents, links, including the slide deck from today. The session was recorded and you'll receive a notification within 24 hours to access it on demand. And before you log off, please take a moment to complete the feedback form so we can continue to improve your webinar experience. On behalf of Buildings Canada and Urban Toronto, have a great day.